Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Salesforce Ben LinkedIn Live collaboration. This time, we're partnering up with Tableau Tim to bring you a crash course in Tableau for Salesforce admins. Before we get things kicked off, let me know where you're joining from in the comments, and I'll quickly go over a few house rules so we can get started. As this is a webinar, all lines are muted, but it is being recorded and will be posted on our LinkedIn channel and our YouTube. Perfect. So I'm going to introduce you all to Tim now. Hi, Tim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All good.
Perfect. Well, I'll let you do your quick introduction and then hand over to go through the deck.
Absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Tim. Some of you might know me as Tableau Tim if you've looked at Tableau content before. My day job, I'm actually a consultant. I work for an analytics firm called Aimpoint Digital based in Atlanta, but I'm actually in London, near London in the UK. I'm a Tableau visionary. I have been for the last 3 years. And as soon as 2 months ago, I got a golden hoodie from Salesforce for the efforts in teaching the data farm, they call it in Tableau, the community essentially, lots about Tableau. In the session today, I want to sort of give everyone an opportunity just to quickly understand what Tableau is. And you might already have maybe used the product, you might have already heard of the product, you might have been told what it is, you might have experienced a particular sort of piece of software in the suite that Tableau make. But I think it's useful to actually approach the question from a slightly higher level and show you the entire sort of depth of the platform. So the idea of today was to sort of really help Salesforce admins understand the full breadth of the platform, but try and compress as much of that into a shorter amount of time as possible. And I'm going to do that in two ways. I'm going to answer the question, what is Tableau? We're going to take a look at the product landscape, show you all the products, what they do. And then I'm actually going to take you through an analytical flow that touches on those core products all the way through. So that's going to be a hands-on demo. You can just watch. You don't have to follow along. But I'll start right from connecting to a data source in Salesforce, and then we'll go all the way to publishing a visualization in Tableau with Tableau Prep, Tableau Cloud as part of that. And we're going to do everything live. So if something breaks, I have backups. Bear with me in that event. But I'm going to try and give you an authentic experience of what that's like to do if you were using it yourself. Okay. So it's interesting because I obviously said that I was going to touch on, what is Tableau, but actually first, I want to talk a bit about Salesforce. And I think the term CRM is commonly used to describe Salesforce, but in the past, whenever I've worked with Salesforce as an analytics consultant, I don't think of it as a CRM at all. CRM is probably, what it's known for. It's essentially, if I simplify it as briefly as I possibly can, it's a way for businesses to track and manage things they care about. And CRM is typically the kind of tool that does that, relationship management or other forms of sort of tracking interactions between people, whether it's opportunities, sales, transactions, processes, projects, all of those can kind of fit into that general term. But when you actually look at the data that's generated from each of those instances, to me, it's a completely different thing. And the closest thing I can sort of call it is a database, but it's not really a database either. Traditional relational databases have very powerful features that actually allow you to do a lot of analytical things and a lot of types of processing very quickly. Salesforce is more catered to the user who's actually putting that data into the system rather than some of the database features you typically get. It's not a warehouse that you can run sort of really large analytical workflows on. Although I will say, since Salesforce acquired Tableau, there's definitely been a big push to kind of position it in that space in certain areas. So a few of the features you'd expect in that sort of warehousing group are starting to appear in things like the Salesforce Data Cloud as well. And then lastly, it's not a data lake. It's not designed to store, raw unstructured data, things like XML, JSON. It's not really the place to put that stuff. A lot of things that go into Salesforce tend to be quite well structured, actually. They tend to represent the things that we care about, and therefore people tend to put things into a certain structure. So it gives you all these sort of flexible ways of tracking and managing things that you'd expect from a database, but it's not really a database in the traditional sense. But when I'm working with Salesforce, the kind of challenges I've had to solve in the past, the things I want to do and the things that I sort of work with, objects and fields, those to me feel like tables in a database. And so I typically approach it not as a CRM, but actually as a place where information is stored. And as a result, I'm trying to, carry out certain things on that, typically analytical, to try and help a business understand what they're trying to do and what they're trying to change. And so this is where Tableau has come in. And especially since the acquisition of Tableau by Salesforce, that's sort of become a really important element. And so what is Tableau? Well, I'll go through this in a bit more detail, but at a very high level, I kind of think of it as these four things. First of all, visual analysis. The key innovation around Tableau has been its ability to enable the end user to do visual analysis easily and quickly. And so that's sort of been the secret sauce of Tableau. And it's a 20-year-old company. I can't think of many products that have been around that long, including things like the iPhone, things that we've come to love. Tableau has been around longer than that. And so all of these principles have sort of followed all the way through, that visual analysis piece in particular. Data exploration has always been easy to do in Tableau. It's been easy to connect to pretty much any data source you want and then do whatever you want with it in the sort of context of the Tableau platform. Collaboration, being able to share things, but make sure that the right people have access to the right things, being able to control that at lots of different levels of granularity as well has been important. And then more recently, I sort of call this a cloud platform. Tableau's had a big push in the last 3 years, no surprise, after Salesforce acquired it, to really become a sort of cloud native analytics platform. So there's been a real push to get lots of the features that we've been used to on-premise capabilities like Tableau Server over to Tableau Cloud and really enhancing them so users who are used to using Salesforce can get a similar experience in the cloud with Tableau. And so if I sort of augment that description, you can kind of see the products and how they sort of help speak to this vision that's sort of come about over the years. And more recently, AI has become an important part of sort of all of these. I won't go into AI much today because that story is still being evolved by Tableau through features like Tableau Pulse. But as you start to see some of the capabilities today, you should just understand that AI will sort of run through all of those. The products won't change. There won't be like an AI specific product, but there'll be AI capabilities throughout the whole entire suite. So let's dive into a little bit more about the Tableau products themselves before we then go through and do like a demo of how it all works. So the products are typically, they're actually quite broad, but when you hear about Tableau, I think most people hear about one product, and that's Tableau Desktop. And I've said here Tableau Desktop and web authoring specifically because Tableau has been going through this transition. When it started, I thought it would take a lot less time than it's taken so far. And that is essentially to move its desktop capabilities, the ability to use Tableau on software on your laptop, on your computer, to the web. So essentially that same functionality in the browser. And that's something Salesforce users are familiar with. You've always gone to a browser to access Salesforce. Tableau has actually always had dedicated software that you install on your machine. And more recently, it's brought this web capability around. That's been a story that's been sort of evolving over the last 6 to 7 years. And more recently, it's picking up pace. There's Tableau Prep Builder. I'll go through that in a second. Essentially a data prepping tool. You've got Server and Cloud, which serve the same purpose. I'll differentiate this a bit more. Tableau Public, the platform where you can really go and learn Tableau entirely for free. You can use it in the browser, download it to your desktop at home or your laptop at home, learn all the capabilities of Tableau. It has the exact same features as desktop, but I'll go into sort of the differences shortly. And then you've got what I would say 2 additive plugins. So data management and advanced management. These enhance the capabilities of Tableau Server and Tableau Cloud. And then you've got sort of the notable mentions at the very end: Tableau Embedded Analytics, Tableau Bridge, Tableau Mobile as well. These are sort of small things that make the platform work better. And then when Salesforce acquired Tableau, we actually had CRM Analytics and Einstein Discovery, which came from the Salesforce world, sit within the Tableau product suite. So these aren't necessarily new to the Salesforce audience, but they've definitely sort of evolved into this analytics space that typically sits in the Tableau sphere of Salesforce's product suite. So that again is an evolving story. And so I won't go too much into that because I really want to focus on sort of the Tableau capabilities that you might not be familiar with. So let's look at the first one: Tableau Desktop, web authoring, and Tableau Public. You can look at these three as essentially the same thing. The thing that's innovated sort of Tableau was this interface, the ability to drag and drop. You'll see that when I go through it very soon. And the thing to understand here is that Tableau Public is exactly the same as Tableau Desktop. The difference is that Tableau Public doesn't let you connect to databases, as it were, so enterprise data sources. The simple reason being that Tableau Public is free, so you can connect to an Excel file, a Google Sheet, CSV files, and learn Tableau without having to, worry about sort of destroying data from your company or getting the right thing set up. You often have challenges on Tableau Public to visualize certain pieces of data. We have weekly challenges, lots of sort of exciting things happening. That's probably the most creative place to see what's possible with Tableau. Whereas Tableau Desktop, that's sort of where the real work is done. So that's what people have when they're in businesses, when they're building analysis, and can connect to a real plethora of data sources. Pretty much every enterprise database under the sun, you can connect to it in Tableau. And for those that don't have native connectors, there's two capabilities. You can use something called an ODBC connector, or you can go to the Tableau Exchange, where companies make connectors for their own tools. And so Salesforce actually has a couple of connectors there to connect to specific parts of Salesforce directly in Tableau without you having to do anything complex. Web authoring is essentially the web version of all of that same capability. So being able to work in the browser, which is what I'll do for the demo today, all in the browser. I'm going to be brave and leave my laptop power behind. I'm just going to see what happens in the browser when I walk through the entire product suite. We have Tableau Prep, and the key thing here is in my entire history of using Tableau, I've actually spent 80% of my time doing data prep and getting the data into a structure that can be used for analysis, and 20% of the time in Tableau doing it quickly, because once I've done all the prep and everything is beautifully aligned and synced up, it's so easy to do that well in Tableau. And so historically, I've used a tool called Alteryx, and that's actually been a really powerful tool because it's allowed me to just set up everything the way I want. Tableau, about 5 years ago, decided to launch a product called Tableau Prep. And the point of this tool was actually to allow users to kind of sit in this space where, instead of doing complicated transformations in things like Excel, instead of downloading a report from Salesforce and then putting in Excel, doing some complicated sort of pivoting here and there, and then grouping it back up and then uploading it back into some other system, you could do all of that natively inside of a tool that was connected to Tableau and worked natively. And so that's essentially what this is. It keeps that sort of visual analysis piece front and center. So you can see here on screen, it's an entirely visual setup. You always have the ability to see the grain of your data. And ultimately, it makes it easy to clean data, but it's not trying to replace really, really powerful tools like Alteryx. It's kind of sitting in that sweet spot in the middle where 80% of the work can be done by 20% of the tools. That's sort of Tableau Prep. And so that's sort of the key focus there. And then you've got Tableau Cloud and Server. When you're creating all this work, whether it's flows that clean up data and share them with people to use for their data visualizations, or if you're building visualizations and you want to make sure you share it with people in a trusted and secure way, Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server is ultimately the home for all of that content. What it also does is it gives you a layer of governance. You can see here on the right, there's a little screenshot of the permissions capabilities. And I'll say that Tableau's permissions are pretty robust. I could talk for an hour just on those things, but what it means is that pretty much every organization can find a structure and a setup that works for their particular organization and their team and the setup, however big, however small. Companies of all sizes use Tableau Cloud and Tableau Server to do this. The difference between these two, though, is actually quite important. Tableau Cloud is cloud-based. So what that means is that Tableau run the infrastructure and manage all of that for you. So upgrades are automatic. It's exactly like Salesforce. And actually, as of a month ago, Tableau Cloud has now fallen in line with this Salesforce update cadence. So you get 3 updates a year attached to the season. So I believe it's spring, summer, and autumn, I think. And then what that means is it just makes it a very easy thing to deploy. Within minutes of getting Tableau Cloud, you can have people set up and add them all into the environment. However, there are some organizations that need very specific requirements. I think of banking, I think of military, I think of healthcare, who have to have on-premise infrastructure to run these kinds of systems. And that's what Tableau Server is. It's exactly the same product, but you run the software, you run the hardware, and you manage all of the infrastructure around it, which means you need someone to do all the things like upgrades, maintenance, fixes, patches, security, adding users. All of that needs to be sort of managed by someone internal. And for some organizations, that's the preferred route, especially given the scale they work at. To give you an idea of splits, the majority of Tableau's customers in the last 3 years, I think it's like by a large percentage, have started with Tableau Cloud, and you tend to see Tableau Server being used in those specialist sort of instances. And so if you're thinking of using Salesforce with Tableau, the best pairing really is going to be Tableau Cloud and Salesforce, because number one, Tableau Cloud is of course integrated to the Salesforce ecosystem very well. And then following on from that, it gets updates more frequently. So you actually get the best of Tableau more often. Tableau Server gets alternate updates. So if you think about the Salesforce cadence, that means it can get 2 updates in 1 year, but in the following year, it only gets 1 because it only comes every other update. So that's something to be aware of. The add-ons, Tableau hates that term. I call them add-ons because that's what they are. You essentially pay an additional percentage of your license cost to enable an enhanced set of features. And the enhancement is really for companies who are looking for the absolute best experience of Tableau. We're talking about things like data lineage, the Tableau catalog, the ability to automate and schedule Tableau prep flows in the background rather than having to manually run them, although you can do it another way, sort of on your laptop. All of this capability is built into the platform. And then on top of that, the ability to monitor and administer your Tableau Cloud instance or your Tableau Server instance is also a separate add-on called Tableau Advanced Management. So these are sort of two separate add-ons. You tend to find that in most new setups of Tableau, they don't really sort of highlight these differences because they're just part of the package. You sort of go through requirements lists and you say, I want this, and you just therefore have this capability built into your price. But for some older customers who, been on Tableau for a while, they don't necessarily have these features. So if you're talking to people and you're trying to understand, hey, why do we not have this feature? It might be that the add-on is not part of your sort of setup. So that's something to be aware of, but I won't go into it in too much detail here. Okay. And then we have the notable mentions, I call them. I kind of think that's a bad name because they are really powerful capabilities. Very briefly, Tableau Embedded Analytics. This is the simple concept of taking Tableau dashboards and putting them elsewhere, whether it's inside of your own application. Let's say maybe you have a banking app, which is the example Tableau use all the time, and you want to be able to show customers their transactions as a beautiful visualization. You could go to Tableau, buy their product as essentially a back-end system and feed it visualizations and use the charts that it's creating and put that inside of your platform and present it to the end user as your own charts. That's something that a lot of companies do, especially when they're trying to stand up analytical solutions very quickly to sell to sell data to third parties or to customers, as it were. Tableau Bridge is a super important thing to be aware of if you're going to use Tableau Cloud, because there will ultimately be on-premise data sources that you need to be sort of aware of in terms of context and how do you get those data sources to the cloud. For some companies, that is still a big challenge and a necessary requirement. And so Tableau Bridge works as this utility that actually sits inside of your network, and it's able to connect to those data sources internally whilst in your network and send them securely to Tableau Cloud, because of course Tableau Cloud is outside of your security framework. So Tableau Bridge is sort of like this secret agent that sits within your walls. Obviously, it's been granted permission to do this, and it's securely sending data to Tableau Cloud so that Tableau Cloud can have the latest access to specific data sets. These could be Excel files in a shared drive. It could be complicated databases that you can only access within your entire system, but that's what it's there for. And then the very last one is Tableau Mobile. This goes without saying. I think people have iPads and mobile phones, and it's just nice to be able to access some of this stuff on the go, especially if you work in sales. And so that's what that is for. It just helps people access all the same functionality. Tableau Desktop actually has a mobile-specific design capability, but things like Tableau Prep don't really work in this context because you're not really going to be designing a data pipeline on your phone. You might sort of go to the browser and use Tableau Prep on something like an iPad. That is possible. I've done it, but it's not really the ideal experience. Really, you want a nice big screen. And so I really just mostly think of Tableau Mobile as a way to consume analytics on the go. And there's a whole host of capabilities that kind of sit behind that. So things like background refreshes, making sure that things update on a schedule so your favorites are always readily available. All of that is built into the tool. So that is sort of a very quick whistle-tops tour of the entire product suite. I'm just going to check into the comments and see if I've missed anything. If you've got any questions, actually, before I move on to the next bit, that would be perfect. Just put them in the comments and I'll try and catch them, because what I want to do is just sort of walk you through the analytical flow, right? I've spent about 15 minutes telling you about the products and how it works. What is it actually like to use? And so for this, we're going to come out of full screen and we're going to sort of go rogue, and we're going to actually start trying to build something. So let me just minimize this, and I'm going to bring Tableau up here. So let's go over here, and I'm just going to make sure that I can still see you guys over here. So sorry for doing the Inception thing there. And then we'll go to Tableau Cloud, and here we go. So here I am in Tableau Cloud. This is an instance that I have as part of, helping Tableau improve the product. You can be part of that program if you go to beta.tableau.com, or you go to the pre-release program. You can enter your details and become part of this process to test out new features. What I've done is I've set up a little challenge. We're going to go to Salesforce, we're going to connect to it, and we're going to essentially try and bring through some data that we're going to try and visualize. You can see that actually 18 hours ago, I actually went and did this just to make sure that it would work as part of a demo. And before this call, like all good demos, you make sure it works again, just so that if it fails, you have a backup. So I'm going to go and connect to a data source. But before I do that, I want to go to my Salesforce Ben project, which I created yesterday. Where is it? It's just there. And you can see that I already have 4 things in here. I can actually show this as a list just to make it easier to see what they are. So we've got these icons that tell us what these types of content are. So I've got a workbook, just bring up my annotations. I've got a workbook, I've got a data source, and then I've got 2 flows as well that you can see here. And these are just really, basic sort of attributes of the information. And what we can do as we go through this pipeline is I'm going to show you how this all comes to life when you're working through an analytical question. So let me just do this. Let me just, can I delete this? Because this was the draft I opened right before this demo to make sure that the instance was working. Sometimes Tableau Cloud can be down, so I just wanted to test that. So let's go ahead to a flow. So when I go to a flow, what I'm actually opening up is an instance of Tableau Prep. And this is running in the browser. Just so you know, I'm using a browser called Arc. You might not know about it. It's a nice new browser. I'm not going to pitch it here, but I'm able to go to this 4 screen where it kind of gets rid of the browser tab at the top. So the first thing you see is how to connect to data. Let's go ahead and hit connect. And as you can see, there's a range of data sources here. These are just sort of the standard connectors. And because I'm in the browser, this list is shorter than the desktop capabilities that you'd get. And the reason that is because essentially when you're on a Windows machine or a Mac or whatever, the drivers that support those databases are slightly different. And so if the company hasn't made the necessary driver, it's not going to be here available to you. But I'm interested in Salesforce, so let's go ahead and just type in Salesforce, and you'll see that it's the top option here. Now, I cooked this demo a little bit. I logged into my Salesforce instance prior to this. So you can see here that it's already logged in. It's nice and green. We can go ahead and hit connect. We'll give it permission. And it's as simple as that, actually. It's become a much, much simpler process. And nothing will happen initially. And then suddenly, on the left-hand side, sorry, all the objects and everything that's stored in your Salesforce instance comes to life. And so I'm going to keep this simple. I'm not going to try and do anything impressive. This is a demo. We've only got like 30 minutes. So let's just go ahead and bring in the account table. Everyone knows that table. So let's go ahead and bring it in. I'm not sort of au fait with Salesforce terminology, so I'm just going to keep calling these tables and fields because I know that's what I call them in an analytical context, but I know there's this concept of objects and fields in Salesforce, so excuse my terminology there. But when I bring this in, you can see the account table is here. And I can even go and see what's in that field. I can choose what I want to work with. I can see what the primary keys are. There's an incredible amount of visibility that's given to you as you start to work with your data. And so if I just go ahead and click on this next step here, you'll see that I clicked on this little line. it gives me a summary of my data. And I've enlarged this to make sure that it, fits on the screen. It's easy for you to see, but essentially I can just go ahead and start to, browse my data. I can start to interact with it. I can start to see, okay, what's going on with this? And because this is dummy data, there's obviously a lot of nulls. It's not perfect. But if I keep scrolling across, you can see there's actually quite a lot of fields and that you can work with. If, for example, I select banking as an example, you can see that Tableau Prep highlights all the other records that are related to it. It gives me like a visual representation across multiple fields. And if I'm looking for something, let's say, where is that account ID field? I can just go ahead and type it, and you can see that it searches the list of fields. Account ID is actually just going to be ID in this particular case. And so that selection that I made, it's still running in the background, and I can see the records that that particular selection makes. As I start to work with this, there's obviously a ton of other tools and things you can do. You can bring in predictions from Einstein Analytics. You can work with basic capabilities to do calculations, pivoting, joins, unions. I won't bore you with that. What I want to do is augment this with my opportunity data. So I essentially want to bring together my account and opportunities table together. So let's go ahead and do that. So there's opportunity. We'll just bring it in, drag it in. And while this is running, I will say this, since Salesforce acquired Tableau, it's sort of obvious to me that lots of the secret sauce behind what makes Tableau work has definitely made it into the Salesforce platform. There's quite a few features that I've noticed just through Salesforce marketing that to me looked like capabilities I've seen in Tableau, but have obviously sort of traveled beyond the Tableau ecosystem. And that's sort of part of the nature of an acquisition, right? Some of that IP makes its way across borders. So I want to bring these two data sets together. Obviously, there's going to be an account ID column. I can actually see it right here. And if I just sort of bring this up, you can see that's my account ID column. And I'm going to match it to the ID column in account. So that's super easy to do. You don't have to do anything complex like a VLOOKUP in Excel. You can just drag clean number 2. We're going to drag it on top of clean number 1, which was the previous step. And what we need to do is a join. Now, this is a data operation. It's essentially like a Venn diagram of how your data comes together. So you can see here, it's got this little icon. And essentially what it's doing here is matching everything that overlaps, but only the things that overlap. And it's doing it on ID to ID. Now, if I look across the two tables, that's not correct because ID in opportunity means opportunity ID, and account in ID in account means account ID. So strictly speaking, what I need to do is match the ID column in account to the account ID in opportunity. And then that's going to give us a better match. The other thing I need to think about is, what is my analysis? Am I actually analyzing opportunities and I'm trying to augment account information to that? Or am I analyzing account information and I'm augmenting opportunity information? It's the other way around. So I want to keep all of my opportunities, even if they don't have account information. So in this little Venn diagram, I need to make sure that I keep everything on this orange side. And so Tableau Prep gives me a nice visual Venn diagram here that I can actually interact with. If I just make this a little bit smaller so you can see more of the interface, it gives you a visual representation of how many records are part of that match and how many aren't. So you can see here the 706 coming from opportunity table. I'm going to get 706 out, but of this data coming from account, 508 are going to be excluded and 494 are going to be included. If I actually click on this, it tells me what those records are. So this is an entirely sort of visual, intuitive experience. There's definitely a lot happening. Don't get me wrong. This probably looks intimidating, but once you just understand where everything is, it's, I think, a very visual, intuitive way of working with your data. So now that we've done that, what's going to happen is Salesforce basically will happen. All the fields are called the same thing in all the tables. So I actually want to add a step in the account information to give everything here a prefix with ACC so that I don't get column name sort of mismatches. So let's go ahead and just select rename. And all the time it's working in the background, kind of doing what I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and add a prefix to everything. I'll go give it AC underscore, and you'll see it adds them all here on the right hand side. I'll go ahead and hit rename. And then very soon we're going to hop out of Tableau Prep and go to desktop and start visualizing this, because I appreciate we're getting a bit nerdy with this data cleansing step. Let's go ahead and go to clean number 3. And If you want to see the metadata view, which is what this is, you can see here clearly that it's added that prefix and the opportunity items have been left as they are. But I can actually go to a tabular view if you're used to looking at something in Excel. Maybe you need to drill into something. Maybe you need to find a specific thing. Let's say I want to go to status column, and there you go. You have a account status, but I actually had what is the is it status? Status. There you go. Is it because I can't spell? No, I think I'm confusing. I'm confusing field. I think I meant stage. Sorry. Stage. Here we go. So let's say I was to sort of go down to this list that needs analysis, right? When I click on this, you can see it's showing 2 of 110 fields, stage and last stage name. And then of those 110 fields, 706 rows are currently selected. If I go to another one, I can actually go and see the granular information in the tooltip. As I'm sort of clicking around, you can see I'm getting all of that rich information. And then here in this sort of detail view, I can always just go and see the detail of that. So let's go ahead and publish this, and we'll go ahead and select an output. And what I'm going to do now is publish this to Tableau Cloud, which is where I'm running this. I'm going to put it in my Salesforce Ben project, which you saw at the very beginning of this. We'll call it demo output. I'll call this number 2, just in case I named that yesterday. You've got the opportunity to publish to quite a few things. Salesforce specifically, you can publish to CRM Analytics, and you can publish to the Salesforce Data Cloud, or you can publish to a database. So this is quite a nice way of taking data out of Salesforce into your database if you want to, or putting it back into Salesforce in other more useful ways. So you can do your transformation here where it's easy, and then put it back in. So we'll go ahead, we won't give it any description, we'll just leave this as is, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run the flow. It obviously wants us to save this, so we'll go ahead and publish the changes. I have not saved this, so I should call this demo flow underscore number 2, and we'll go ahead and hit publish. I should have also embedded the credentials. That's really naughty of me. I'll do that in a second. So let's go ahead and publish that again and hit run flow. And what will happen is the flow has been added to the queue. Now, the reason that is because I'm on a cloud instance. Other people are using this instance. So you basically go into a queue, and if I go ahead and view the flow, it will go ahead and show me the metadata of this flow. Now, the nice thing about this is obviously we've just built this. You've just seen me build it. But in the background, there's obviously metadata that's useful here. So let's say someone comes in 2 weeks down the line and they want to know, hey, what data is Tim using in this flow? They can just go to the lineage tab, and you can see that it's not ready yet because it's still running. It's still sort of running in the background. So let's go look at the job, and you can see, oh, there it is. There's a task. It's running right now. It will happen at some point. I will give this just one more second. And if it doesn't say, oh, it failed, typical, of course it failed. Anyway, it's so typical that it would fail. Obviously, you can see the other completions here. Does it say why it failed? Oh, because I didn't embed. I know why it failed. I don't know if you saw me when I was publishing this up, but what I failed to do was I failed to publish and include my credentials for Salesforce in the flow when it ran. So what it's essentially it told me this when I went to publish this, but if I just click on this connection here and make sure that's correct, and if I go to publish, let's go do this, and then you can see here I get this ability to embed credentials. We'll go ahead and publish it there again, and we'll replace the existing one. And what I'll do is I'll leave this running, and then we'll come back to it because I already have a data source ready to go in case this happened. So we'll go ahead, view the flow again, and you'll see that, okay, this failed already, but there should be a new job already running. Let's go ahead actually and trigger that job very quickly. Go to our demo flow, and we're going to hit run. And as soon as that's running, we're going to skip ahead, and we're going to go to the data source that I created yesterday in case this happened. So here it is, sample output. And this sample output is exactly the same information. Now, what happens is Tableau actually analyzes this data in the background. You can see these are all the same fields that have been created. And what I was going to show you was the lineage capability. And what Tableau is doing is it's grabbing the metadata and it's actually able to show me, hey, look, this is the metadata related to that flow. These are the tables that you used. You've got account and opportunity from Salesforce. You can even see the Salesforce instance, but it's also created an extract, which is the thing that I've scheduled to run just now that's happening in the background. Now, you can see that yesterday, I actually did build a workbook from this. So I can actually go to the workbook and see, oh, there's a sample workbook that's been built using this particular data source. So when you look at lineage, you have this ability to go right to the source all the way to the individual people who are actually using the asset here on the right-hand side. You can see it's just me. So let's go ahead and build that new workbook that I was going to with this particular data source. Let's go ahead and do that. And so here we are. It's still in the browser, still using Tableau. And this time we've gone from Tableau Prep. We've published a data source to Tableau Cloud into a project called Salesforce Ben. And now we're going to build a visualization using that same data. Now you'll see here that when I look at my data, it's kind of like just a long list. And this is a side effect of essentially using Tableau Prep. You kind of get this really long list of fields. And another way you could have done this is you could have actually connected to the same data exactly the same way in Tableau Desktop. So just to show you like what that looks like, I can go here, connect to data. I can say, for example, connectors, and you can go ahead and click Salesforce. It'll obviously give me the same login screen. I'll allow it. And as soon as that's all working and dandy, surprise, surprise, you get exactly the same fields and everything that you're used to here. So you can drag account in, you can drag opportunity in and start using them. The value of using this over something like Tableau Prep is it's just more readily available and people can sort of self-serve a little bit faster. So you can use something called the data model. And what the data model allows you to do is to specify the relationship between two data sources without necessarily physically bringing them together, which is what I did in Tableau Prep. It's a bit like in Excel. You can kind of have two sheets in Excel, but not bring them together, not do any sort of VLOOKUPs between them. What I'm doing here is just specifying how I would do some sort of lookup between the two data sources. And so for this, obviously it's ID in the account. That's not right. Why is it? Oh, this is really frustrating. When you connect to Tableau Desktop, it likes to give you nicer field names than are actually available, whereas Tableau Prep just shows you the actual field name. So here, account ID is actually account ID, and here you can see account ID opportunity is what this one's called. So now those two are done, that's it. I can go ahead and create a new sheet. And what it will do is it will create an extract. The reason that is because obviously Salesforce is like this big, online system. And what it's wanting to do is to take a snapshot of the data so that you can work in it here in Tableau without it having to constantly query Salesforce to get the data, essentially. It's just a little bit more performant. And it's for analytics purposes, you definitely get faster results and faster visualizations and charts. So let's just let this load. I'll check the comments. I see Simon's comment saying, this makes SQL joins look really old tech. All that's happening underground is that it's just SQL. I'll show you something that's sort of the secret sauce of Tableau. It's called VizQL. When we work in Tableau Desktop, what it's actually doing is translating those visual sort of interfaces into SQL for you in the background. So ultimately, everything always comes down to SQL, but it kind of does sort of make it nicer and I think more accessible for more people to use and get the actual types of joins you're doing correct. Of course, this is taking longer than I wanted it to, so I might have to go and persist with the demo. I'm going to have to do this, I think. Let me go back to this instance, and I'm really glad I took that sort of snapshot because otherwise you guys would be just waiting for spinners. So we'll go ahead and what we'll do is we'll go to our sample workbook. And what I'll do is I'll just start from the sample workbook without having without these sheets. So I'll go and edit the workbook, but what you can assume here is that you'll end up in exactly the same spot. So I'm going to start from sheet number 5, and what we're going to do is essentially build out the exact same information that I've got inside of my workbook again. So you can see here that I've got the 2 data sources. So the sample output that came from the prep flow, and this is the second one that I created inside of Tableau itself. Notice that they have slightly 2 different icons. One is a published data source and one is a connection, basically. The difference between those two doesn't matter. They're both data sources for now. So let's just go with that. If I click on them, I can switch between them. And notice when I click on this first one, I get a nicer sort of representation of actually what's going on. So I get the account information, I get the opportunity information here as well. What I can do is I can just start trying to visualize this. So one of the things I brought in was the stage. If I don't know what a field is, I can just start typing it and we can bring it in. Go ahead and put stage, and you can see here are the different stages. I can also just browse those fields myself. It's broken down into dimensions and measures, so you can kind of go and get the things you need. I can go ahead and just build a very, very basic chart like this. I think there's a field called industry, which can help give some color to some of this information. And boom, we've got a bar chart that's telling us something. I'm not sure it's that useful because ultimately there's normally some sort of analysis involved, right? Someone's normally asking a question. That's why you go and build analytical solutions. So let's quickly sort of make up a scenario here. Let's say someone wants to specifically analyze the items here or things that are in the stage needs analysis, right? Let's say that's going to be our point of focus. So we'll start with this particular chart. We'll say this is a bar chart. And then what I'll do is I'll go to another tab. And what I'm going to create is another chart with the opportunity name. Let's go ahead and grab the name. Now, this is normally a really noisy, long list. It's not going to be nice either because it's just got a long list of items. So we'll put like expected amount and we'll put the amount next to it. So we can kind of see those two side by side. I'll maybe sort by amount just to keep this sort of in some sort of decent order. I'll build another chart just now just to sort of give a little bit more examples of some of the basic charts you can build. I'll put amount on color. That will give us a box, which doesn't sort of do much. But then as soon as I put name on detail, what you start to see is that Tableau starts to automatically suggest different chart types because it's thinking, what are you trying to do here? And if I put amount on size again, then it gives me a tree map. And now I can start to do something a little bit more interesting with this. The color doesn't really help, just, telling me which is the largest. Obviously, I can see that if I had another sort of visual tell. So I'll remove amount from that. And instead, what I'll probably do is I'll put industry onto that color. So let's, instead of looking for it, let's just type it. And we'll put industry on color. There we go. And now we've got some sort of logical groupings. And the specific ones I was trying to look into were the ones that needs analysis. So now needs analysis is a stage. So let's go ahead and grab a stage here. Now, when I put the stage on the filters, it shows me those and I can just go ahead and tick this box, hit apply, and boom, these are just the ones that need analysis. Now, boxes are nice, but it would be great if they had context, right? So let's do something else. Let's go ahead and put the names on these boxes so we can see what they look like. So I'll just drag name onto label and voila, it's that simple. You can literally use this tool as intuitive as sort of your brain would work. So color, size, label, detail, and tooltip all do exactly what you'd expect. If I wanted to see this at maybe a lower level of detail, let's say at the moment we don't have stage on detail, but if I wanted to, I could go ahead and put that on. Nothing will change because ultimately I've already filtered to just one specific stage. If I had some other more interesting field, let's say, I can never remember what's actually good in opportunity because I just don't spend as much time as I probably should do with it. Let's put 1 on here. Let's put that and see if it splits this. It won't split it out, of course, because again, each opportunity is in an individual field, but let's leave this as this. And what I want to show you is how you can bring these together to tell a story. So we'll go ahead to a dashboard. And this is a blank canvas where you can bring together the different sheets, the different charts you've built together. And so I'm going to use the ones that I built yesterday. because they're a little bit sort of better looking and they're nicer. So I'll bring my scatter plot, which shows me a little bit about the different opportunities that need analysis. I'll bring this chart, which shows me the same tree map that we were just looking at. And then lastly, I'll bring a map, and I want to put this on the bottom just here for now. And this visually shows me sort of the different locations around the world where these opportunities are sort of playing out. I can play around with this. I can move this around. I can format this. I can get this to work as much as I want. And, very quickly, I can just now start focusing on the presentation element. My data analysis is done. 25 minutes ago, I was sat in Tableau Prep. I connected to Salesforce. We've done the extract. We've pulled it through. We even did some very basic data prep to bring these two together to make them a little bit more interesting. I'm sure you guys probably know 100 things you would do with that tool much better than I just did. But then as soon as you've done the work of bringing that data together, you bring it into Tableau and you start to sort of craft your story, your analytical story that's going to enable people to drill into this and do something that's more interesting. What does that look like? Well, as I keep doing throughout this demo, here's one I built earlier, as it were. So, when I click on these dots, you can see the interactions changing the charts. So what I've done is I've linked these different charts together. And now that data you saw in Salesforce is now this new living thing. And it's in a format that makes it easier for someone to drill down and really go into it, rather than the sort of standard things you get in reports sometimes, maybe the standard sort of charts and dashboarding you get in Salesforce. That can be kind of cumbersome, really, to do some of this really powerful drilling into. So that has literally been a whistle-stop tour of what I would say an analytical workflow is. The very final step is obviously publishing it up so that you can share this with other people. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and go to the workbook, and I'll show you what your end users would actually see, because what I was in there was the editing view. To show you what the end user would actually see, you need to go to a dashboard. So I'm going to go to this sort of grid view just so that I can see this visually. And this is the dashboard itself without any of the chrome of editing. Obviously, there's 100 different things I would do to this. I'm a design freak. I'd spend probably another hour just getting this right and getting the interaction sweet, but it works exactly the same. And there's lots of different views you can have to this as well. Now, if we go back to this sort of high-level project, the lineage also lives on here. All of that information, all that metadata that we just spent a ton of time bringing in from prep, now it's become a little bit more rich because we've added a few sheets to this. So these are the sheets that we've just built now. These are the dashboards that are in there, and you can kind of very quickly see why Tableau is a really powerful analytics platform. It's really designed for taking your data out of the systems where people do their work and allowing you to cut it, transform it, and share it in a much, much more resilient and repeatable way. And the best thing of all is the permissions capabilities. I don't want to sort of geek out on this too much, but you can literally manage anything you want about each and every single asset, right down to what people see, what they can do, what they can download. And that really gives companies confidence about security and management as well. So that is the end of the demo. I'm glad I managed to get to the end of that. Trying to piece together the whole entire thing in a short amount of time just to give you a flavor was super important. One of the things I will say, though, is that in real terms, this whole sort of process would actually take, maybe an hour or maybe a bit longer, especially if you're familiar with the data. You definitely get through the data analysis very quickly. The difficult thing, the thing that takes the longest, is actually working with business stakeholders and making sure you give them what they want so your dashboard gets used. But more recently, Salesforce is doing a ton of work to make sure that these dashboards that you build here in Tableau can live natively inside of Salesforce. So they look and feel like they belong in Salesforce. And the best thing about that is, as of 2 months ago, there's a new Lightning Web component that supports Tableau natively. So you don't have to go through this rigmarole you had to before of setting things up with your server admin. Now it should just be as simple as getting some variables about your Tableau Cloud instance, setting up connected apps, which your server admin should know how to do. And then if you want to take something you've built in Tableau and you want to put it inside of Salesforce so people can just log into Salesforce and never have to go to this environment to see the charts, it's all going to work really nicely as well. So yeah, that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of that. I'm going to check down at my notes and The next thing I had on here was was a Q&A, essentially, because we've only got about 10 minutes, but hopefully that's been useful. Let me look down at my notes and see what we have. I don't know if there's been any sort of questions you've seen that are useful.
Hi, Tim.
Hi,
I'm
you're
back
back.
again. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was so insightful and really uncovered the potential that it could have by integrating Tableau into Salesforce. So yeah, really, really insightful. We've had a few questions from YouTube, but please, if you have any, pop them in the comments and we will get to answering them now.
Yeah, sure.
So the first one is, what's the best way to learn Tableau?
The best way to learn Tableau. So the thing I would say is you want to focus, because ultimately Tableau is so big. When I learned Tableau, I could learn everything and it was fine. I learned version 7. This was like a decade ago. Okay. So maybe giving away my age there. But today it's just so big. So I would say start from where you are now. Don't try and sort of walk away from what you have. So someone said that, Tableau Prep makes SQL look, old. Well, that's actually a really good starting point. Let's see what of your SQL skills you can bring to Tableau Prep and become a data prepping professional within Tableau, and then slowly expand your knowledge from there out to Tableau Desktop and so on and so forth. Maybe you're a business user and you're just going to interact with these dashboards. Learn a bit about data visualization and how to make charts better readable. That's always the best context, because then you're really bringing something to the table and you're going to always sort of be stepping up, rather than this sort of challenge sometimes where you say, I'm going to learn Tableau. Someone tells you to learn Tableau Server. You look at Tableau Server and you're like, oh my word, what is this? It's like hieroglyphics. And that's because you've come in at like a level that's maybe a bit too advanced. And so start with where you are, slowly grow. And there's tons of resources in the Tableau community from pretty much everyone that is a Tableau visionary, a Tableau ambassador, user groups. All you have to do is turn up like you've done to this session, watch, consume, and try the things out in Tableau Public or wherever you have access to Tableau, and you'll be good.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. And then we had a question regarding where they can find out more from you, Tim, and learn more from you. So I have popped in the comment section throughout Tim's YouTube channel and his desktop crash course. So please go and have a look. There's lots in the comments, so you should be able to find them nice and easily. But I'm sure there's lots and lots of valuable information on there. Perfect. So then we've got one more that I can see. How can I learn Tableau with Salesforce?
Yeah. So the pairing is super interesting, because I think Salesforce is one company. So what I've been telling people for a long time is, hey, Tableau used to be a company on its own, right? And the Salesforce acquired it, and it's now just Salesforce. So the way I rephrase that question is, how do I just learn Salesforce? And I think you guys already know how to do that. Obviously, sites like Salesforce Ben, courses, and so on and so forth. But that specific pairing of Tableau and Salesforce within the Salesforce platform, Trailblazer is actually a really good place, because Tableau is fairly new to the Salesforce family. All the Trailblazer content in all the Tableau content in the Trailblazer community is all fresh. It's been done in the last year. So it's very up-to-date Tableau content, and it's just readily available and free. The next thing to understand is that question I posed at the very beginning. What is Salesforce? Okay, you know it as a CRM, but when you're working with objects and fields, you're actually not talking about CRM. You're talking about data warehousing and data storage. So learn those principles and then merge them together with what you know about Tableau, and merge it together with what you know about Salesforce. And then you'll sort of get this sort of edge with Salesforce that, do things that you can't do inside of Salesforce because you've got Tableau doing them for you in the background. I think that's sort of the best pairing. And I think lots of people who know Tableau, who are learning Salesforce, are approaching it in that way, but the opposite way around, of course.
Yeah, no, great explanation. So we've actually had a few more questions come in.
Sure.
So we've got one here. How do you see the integration of Marketing Cloud Intelligence with Tableau?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because I think, like, if I just step back a minute, there's definitely, just speaking honestly, the integration between Salesforce and Tableau hasn't been as fast as I thought it would have been. And I think that's because of a couple of strategic decisions made around what's actually powering some of that behind the scenes. And so at a very basic level, I kind of feel like what happened this year with some of the announcements at Dreamforce was that they got over some of the huge challenges that allowed them to now bring a bunch of other capabilities through a lot faster. So Marketing Cloud is one of them, because I'm not sort of too familiar with it, but I do know that there's been a few challenges. But what I'm starting to see with a lot of these is that now Salesforce is starting to tick them off very, very quickly. I kind of think AI has been a distraction in that sort of process, because it kind of popped up out of nowhere. And so all the attention's gone to that. But we'll slowly get there. I think I've seen tons of progress just in the last year, and I'm hoping it gets better in the future. But ask Tableau, reach out to Tableau. There's going to be someone in the Tableau community who's done that piece of work. The way I've done it sometimes is I've just used another third-party tool like Fivetran or Airbyte to just get the data out of the system I need it to, put it into a database, and once it's there, I can do whatever I need to. That is sometimes the brute force way, but the best way. So it just depends on your situation and resources you have within the company.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. So that's all we've got time for today. I want to say a massive thank you to you, Tim, for such an informative session. Is there any final words you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, thank you. Thank you very much for watching. Come find me on my channel. I have tons of content around connecting to lots of different data sources and tools. I'm obviously focused on Tableau. So if it's Tableau and Salesforce, you'll definitely find something there. And reach out to other people in the community as well. Not just me, there's hundreds of people who are willing to help.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Tim. And thank you to everyone that's watching. And we hope to see you again for another LinkedIn Live soon.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.